Welcome to Palworld. This is the Palpagos Islands. Creatures of many sizes of various elements living happily. Various locals living together in harmony with the pals across the islands. I will be spending 100 days here as I make my way through the lands in order to be the very best. Like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test, and to train them is my cause. Waking up on the beach, I was immediately surrounded by a Meowth, Wooloo, and Chicken. Now that isn't their actual names, but let's be honest, this is the Pokemon game we've all been waiting for, even if legally due to international copyright laws, they are now called pals. I saw a tablet nearby which told me the towers are the truth, and the tree holds the key. Then began to ascend up a long stone staircase. And I figured the best place to start this adventure would be by completing the tutorial shown in the top right. So I got to the top of the stairs, entering wind-swept hills. The first of many locations I'll be exploring as I set a goal to try fight every boss, catch every pal, and visit every biome. But first I had a chat to this lady with a shotgun who gave me some wood. Picked up some of my own and spotted my first actual pals. A pair of Mamarest. Two very large and very strong grass type pals, but they were out of my strength range. For now, so headed over to a flat spot where some chickens and sheep were to build my first primitive workbench. The first task of the tutorial and start of any Palworld playthrough, as you'll build a bunch of basic gear and equipment here. To do that, I needed resources. So I punched a rock, giving me stone and pallium fragments, and with these two resources and the wood from earlier, I was able to make my very first Palsphere. This basic orb is the key to catching and taming your very first Pokemon. I mean Pal. So punch the nearby chicken in the face in order to weaken it before turning and yeeting the sphere right at it, trapping it with a 100% chance, giving me my very first Pal. This was a Chickapee, who I chose to name Cluck. The first of over 100 pals that were available during my playthrough. But let me focus on getting myself set up first. So I made a pal box, which basically acts as the PC in Pokemon which stores all of your pals, as well as you can use to put them to work in order to automate different actions such as harvesting wood, farming crops, and eventually committing to the industrial age as I force my pals to mass produce weapons for my conquest. But for now, my Cluck couldn't do much, so I instead made a pickaxe to help speed up my stone collection. Grabbed some berries from the bushes in the area and used the level ups I had gained so far to increase my work speed and weight. I end up focusing mainly on health and weight in this playthrough, since pals can do most of the crafting, traveling, and attacking. Until that happens, I made myself an axe to help gather wood faster, which I used to make a bed for Cluck so his sanity wouldn't completely deplete. As if that happens, the pals will die or, worse, refuse to work. And I was up to level 5, so I learned a couple engrams, and the most notable of which was the fire bow and arrows. A weapon to set my enemies ablaze, and the feed box so my pals would have somewhere to eat. I made up a spear and some spheres to immediately beat the nearby chickens, so I could trap them in the spheres to tame them. But with my plans to get stronger, I needed to upgrade my base's level. You do this by completing the missions on the pal box, and the first of which was to make a storage box. I chose to fill the box immediately with wood and stone, then using the newfound wealth made up 10 more pal spheres as I had to catch 27 more pals for the tutorial. Since there was also a task to capture 5 lamb balls, the small sheep pal we had seen on the beach, I quickly used my spear to poke them, spear to catch them, and quickly grabbing all 5 in a nice quick succession. And you'll see if you catch the same pal multiple times, you can get a nice healthy bonus to experience to truly boost you forwards. With that knowledge in mind, I captured 5 more lamb balls, mastering the lamb ball capturing process. So to celebrate the end of the first day and mastery of capturing lamb balls, I killed off the next one I saw. Starting out in the morning, I was going to need more spheres again, since mine were full of lamb balls. So mined up some more pallium on the nodes nearby, to the point where my pickaxe even broke. But I did find a pal sphere lying on the floor, and I used it to capture a second Chickapee, then headed home. In order to repair my pickaxe, I had to make a repair bench, only to be short of wood. Chopping down some trees nearby, I built the bench, and my lamb ball even helped me build it, Repaired my pickaxe as the land ball kept working by immediately going and gathering some stone nearby. Such a good little mutton chop. I had to craft up some cloth, then made myself a 3-shot bow. A bow which, surprisingly, shoots 3 times for 1 arrow. I also made some more spheres, a lot more spheres, but it was starting to get dark, so I needed some shelter. Building myself a nice basic wooden shack with what is an awesome building mechanic. Then placed down my bed before leveling up my power box, having completed the missions. Increasing your power box level helps with one main feature. It allows you to have more pals working around your base. So currently I just have a bunch of sheep running around, and hopefully I can get more useful pals later on. But at least these mutton chops help me make a feed box, which basically acts as a trough for the pals to eat. Speaking of which, I built a berry plantation to farm a sustainable food source, so I wasn't forced to murder the entire population. I likely will do it anyways, but at least I don't have to. Seeding and watering so they could grow, I got the sheep to make up some more pal beds while I gathered more wood. Making a campfire and gear bench to continue leveling the pal box all the way to level 6 to end off the day. The next morning was spent harvesting some stone and wood to make a crusher, and this structure can allow you to grind some resources down into other resources. Made myself an egg incubator which can hatch the wild pal eggs you'll find around the map, and then made my very first set of cloth armor. Next was a massive chicken catching spree for experience. I caught enough for a running total of 10, so I'd get that sweet boost in experience from the complete XP bonus. And I ended up building a workbench in the middle of nowhere so I could make up some more pal spheres when I saw the Meowth ripoff, a Cativa. So of course I had to attack it with my axe, beating it senseless before throwing the sphere straight at it, capturing it to be my 3rd unique pal. So I quickly captured another 3 more pals in hopes one of them would have good stats, as not all pals are equal, but I'll explain that more later when we start doing some breeding for better stats and potentially even some hybrids. However, continuing down the ramp and land, I spotted some more Mammarest which I didn't want to get close to, and a small penguin came bobbing by, who I did. One quick arrow to the face and a pal sphere to the head, capturing it with a 34% chance. My very first Pingullet, who I named Squishy, and I'll be naming a ton of my pals after my Patreons later on in the video. Another Pengu attacked me, so I fought back with my sphere, allowing me to catch it as it was guarding a scorching egg. This was one of the types of eggs that can be found scattered across the map, being various types of various sizes, all for uniquely weird and wonderful pals. But something more interesting caught my eye on the other side of this gap, but I couldn't exactly jump across. Thus I pulled out my wood to build a nice bridge, and simply skipped across collecting a lift monk effigy, something that you'll see to be very important later, and some skill fruit from the trees. These skill fruit can be fed to your pals, teaching them different abilities, like a TM from Pokemon. With my loot, I headed home just in case I was to die that I don't lose it, then plopped the egg in the incubator to begin hatching, so we'll see what hatches into once it's done. Now my one sheep was looking a bit sad, so I gave it a pat on the head in order to cheer it up, so it'd get back to work. But being low on food, I decided to cook up some lamb ball kebabs on the fire to fill up my belly before lying down in my bed as the day came to an end. As day 4 began, I did some basic gardening and got my penguin to water my crop plot, as pals will automatically do any task they have the skills for if they are happy. So I'll be automating a lot of this menial work later with my slaves. I mean pals. Making my way back out to see what pals were in my area, I had a closer look at the Mammarest from earlier, and these were the King of the Forest. A basically mini boss that is scattered across Palworld you need to defeat or maybe even capture as your own. Usually there is only one, but since I've messed up a setting in my world, 2 of them will spawn at every location instead of just 1. So my adventure was going to be a lot harder when I want to start taking them out. Further along there was a glowing red shrine, which I activated as this was a fast travel station. They are dotted all along the islands, helping to speed up travel by fast traveling between them. Makes sense, I know. There are also these pink llamas hopping around and my legs were feeling tired, so I thought if I can capture one and make a saddle, I could use this to help me get around much faster, so I drew back my bow and fired. It immediately fired an air blast back before charging in, so I had to dive out of the way. I continued to fire into it before throwing my sphere, only to have it deflected by the llama. So I fired even more bow shots into it before yeeting another sphere, capturing it with a 69% chance. Nice. My first alpaca. Its friend kept attacking me, but I was able to fend it off to trap it up. 2, only 4 to break free, and 1 more shot killed it. Whoops. I named my first llama Carl. Now if only it had a hat. I made up even more spheres as I had seen someone and had a sinister idea. Turning and taking aim, I fired my bow at the skilled islander sitting peacefully by his pot, firing twice before launching my pulse sphere. 1 failed, so threw another, capturing the villager. Now, this isn't the most morally correct thing to do, but I just wanted to see if it would work. I just now had some PIDF guards after me who were taking 0 damage from me, so I just left. Heading home to snuggle my sheep and do some more mining, chopping, and crafted myself a common shield for some added defense. Also found some chests which gave me a mega sphere, which is used to capture more powerful pals. That's when I spotted what was the coolest pal yet, a dinosaur, which looked like a hippie green dinosaur. A bit out of my league for the moment, so I crafted up a saddle for Carl my alpaca, allowing me to mount her, gaining my very first form of travel. It was a huge upgrade as I charged straight through some sheep, some cativa, and some chickens. I was feeling strong as I massacred the weakest of all the pals. I continued to fight stuff in the morning before making the decision to see if I could take down the mammoths. Now I was level 14, they were level 38, so imagine my surprise when my first attack did a whole 1 damage. I turned to run away near instantly. Now, after I escaped, I still wanted to complete this tutorial, and the only thing left to do was defeat the boss at Rain Syndicate Tower. I was first going to need to actually find Rain Syndicate Tower. So as I rode Carl up through a gap in the mountain, I could see a tall mechanical looking building. That had to be it. Except something a bit more sparkly caught my eye. I had found a shiny. Occasionally in Palworld you'll find these sparkly pals, and these are called shinies. They're actually called rares because they're a rare version of regular pals with increased stats and are larger. They also work a little bit faster for your base. Definitely worth catching if you can. Be careful, as they are much stronger, so I had to run away, and hiding up on the ridge was a big blue dinosaur. A Relaxaurus. So adorable! I definitely want one. But for now I just headed home as night was beginning to fall, having failed to catch my first rare. Waking up in the morning, I checked on my egg, which still had a few hours to hatch. Reminded me of Ark all over again, and I set out to try and make it back to the tower once more. The shiny was no longer around, so simply ran up the path arriving at Rain Syndicate Tower. I made sure to claim the fast travel point, then entered the tower of my first boss battle. This was Zoe and Grisbolt. Oh, you have way too much health. That's way more health than I expected. I threw out Carl to be able to outpace them, sprinting behind one of the many pillars as I began to dodge their attacks. Running, attacking, jumping and dodging. This was not going to be an easy fight, and I was sorely underprepared. 2 minutes had already passed and I had barely dealt 1,000 damage to the 30,000 health behemoth. fighting, fleeing, but all that seemed to be happening was fading. No matter what I did, I just simply didn't have the damage for this fight yet. The timer ticking lower and lower. They were down to 17k health, but time was up as I timed out, failing my first boss battle. Defeating me, sending me back to my base, and I think I need to come up with a better strategy. Built myself a primitive forge in the morning, which went really quickly thanks to my now small force of pals and one human helping build it faster. I also set up a ranch, which is a very useful structure for your Palworld playthrough. This ranch allows certain pals with the grazing skill to come in, chill out, eat some grass, and in return, depending on the pal, they'll drop a variety of useful items for free. I also set up some more boxes for some extra storage space, and collected all the stone that my Kativa had harvested, and simply left on the floor. All of which was so I could craft even more arrows with the help of Squishy, my penguin. But I needed something that could run my forge, so I needed a fire pal. That's when I came across these cute fiery foxes. So I shot all 3 of them, trapped all 3 of them, made them my new friends. I also caught 2 of these small sap plant looking pals called a gamos. Now, why was I capturing these low level weak pals? Well, this is all part of the automation I mentioned earlier. You see, the fox parks, who I named Dracon, could use its breath to power my forge. And the gamos, who I named Sappy, could spit its seeds onto the farm in order to plant it. So now I could head out and massacre the penguins and chickens for their drops and experience. While back at my base, the pals work relentlessly to farm me resources. But I wasn't the only one trying to extort the pals, as I came up on a group of syndicate thugs. These dudes were bad news. They want to kill all the pals and take them on as slaves. And I simply wasn't going to let that happen, as I didn't like the competition. They even tried taking on a mammoth, but got absolutely squashed. It was then on day 8 that I came across what is arguably the best named pal in the game. This is a thwack. YouTube, don't demonetize me please. It's like quack with an F. I wanted to capture one. I just had to be careful of the mammoth. So after aggroing it over, I was able to throw down my spear, capturing my first thwack. I wanted to capture the second one too, but ran out of balls, so I quickly built a workbench, crafted a ball, and captured it as I fell off the cliff, but it worked anyway. So with my thwacks now tamed, I spotted a green squirrel running around nearby. I tried to capture it, only for it to break free, leaving me with no more spheres, and it was gone by the time I returned with a new sphere. I had to just keep moving, but there was another new pal nearby, a small yellow looking rat with a lightning bolt tail. You're right, it's a a sparket. I hit it with a few times with my bow, weakening it so my sphere could snag it with a 100% chance, and I chose to name my sparket Raichu. I captured another one nearby, so if I ever planned to breed them, I could. And at home, I built my pals their very own sauna. This basically gives them a quick way to quickly regen their sanity, which drains while they're working. And I clearly want the best for my pals. That's why I set up a bunch of straw beds for them to sleep on, which I made them build. And while I headed off to go harvest a bunch of ore, but along the way there were some Hookrates, which I didn't have yet, so I had to capture one. Then as the day was coming to an end, I had my Dracon cook up the ore that I had just gathered. And once the ingots were smelted, I used them to make a high quality workbench. This bench can be used to make some higher tier equipment. I wanted it to make some pelt armor for extra protection, as well as a fire bow, and the arrows for it. Then as I was arriving at the tower, I spotted a commotion off to the side. This was the Syndicate raid camp. They opened fire on me, so riding on Carl, I stormed in, blasting them down one by one, as they had a pal caged in the center. I killed off enough thugs so I could hop off Carl to release the pal, but doing this actually made me capture it as my own. So I now had a Mao Christ, which was a lot rarer than I actually originally thought, but I'll explain why later when I figure it out. Checked off the pal deck, I guess. But I had a tower to bring down as I rode over to the entrance. Zoe and Griswold came out swinging, so I immediately had to dive behind a pillar for cover to throw out Carl while I began to fire arrow after arrow. Carl was using air and earth bolt like a wizard in RuneScape, but they were starting to deal too much damage, so I called Carl back to send in my Hookrates, but it got obliterated. This fight was not going to be easy as I threw out my Drakon, my Fox. Griswold was chasing me down while my Fox inflamed it. Damage felt slow, so I threw out a Lamball to see if it would be any good, but it just kept knocking itself unconscious. But I did not relent with my massive arrows. I had to bring back Carl Malpaka as they clearly would deal the most damage, but I was out of arrows and mounted Carl for the final fight, speeding around the arena, sending air and sand at the oversized Pikachu. Until finally I got it down to 276 health, turned and flung my Sandblast, 12 health and one more air cannon, defeating Zoe and Griswold. My first boss eliminated, so I ascended to the top of Rain's Syndicate Tower, where I could survey the land around me. I saw an area of the map with a reddish hue to it, which looked to be a new biome, and headed out to it, where I came across a cute Eevee looking thing that I captured fairly easily, named a Vixie. This cute little guy was considered the idol of Palpagos Island, but nearby was another group of Syndicate thugs bullying one. So I charged in to take them out, and with them sorted out, I ran up the ridge to see an abandoned church. Carl and I headed over to take a closer look, and inside was the first statue of power. Now, remember those Liftmonk effigies from earlier? You can use these to boost your character's capture power, allowing you to more easily capture stronger pals. With my power slightly stronger, I headed off again when I got jumped by some wild pigs who I captured with my newfound powers. As these pigs have the mining trait, so I can use them to automate my stone collection later on, only to spot the biggest llama I had ever seen. King Pucker. Another one of those world bosses wandering the map, and I wanted to try to capture it, but my arrows did nothing, and my Drakon got absolutely shredded. My Lamball also got wrecked, so I just decided to get the heck out of here. I did find a little lightning hedgehog that I captured as the day was ending, called a Jolthog, so I named him Henry. I found a chest early in the morning and spent some time capturing a bunch of Jolthogs and Tansies in the area. With how dark it was in some of these areas, I crafted myself a torch as I wanted to explore this mine shaft I stumbled across, descending down into the darkness, filled by my torchlight. At the end of the tunnel was a black marketeer. Now these guys are bad news. They trade in the black market of pals, buying and selling rare variants of pals that aren't too commonly found around the island. But I had nothing else I wanted to gain in here, so got home where I then spent some time doing my daily chores like mining, base management, only to get a warning that I was being raided. A herd of man-eating pals. Riding on Carl, I charged in, but they ran straight past towards my base, so my horde of pals all stood their ground to attack, killing off the invasion. I made sure to pet Carl for doing such a great job, repaired all my equipment and checked on my egg, which was so close to being ready to hatch. Made some Mega Spheres, which are an upgraded version of Spheres, as you get multiple tiers, from Basic to Mega, then Giga, Hyper, Ultra, and finally Legendary. With how much stone I was starting to need, I crafted myself a better pickaxe, and this was a huge upgrade. Like damn, I gained so much more stone. So much stone that I couldn't even move. So I just built up some stone structures right where I was standing, since I needed the base upgrade anyways. Heck, I even wanted to change base locations at some point, as there's a lot of benefit to having multiple base spots for different goals. But I finished my little stone house before jogging down the hill where I found a shiny Cativa. I of course had to capture it. Who knows, maybe sometime I can do a playthrough with only shinies. Nearby the shiny in this ruin, there was a purple deer who I didn't have yet. So after many arrows and a couple wasted spears, I weakened it so I could capture the Icthia deer who I named Prongs. Turning around, there was a large dark egg which I yoinked to hatch at my base, as that scorching egg should be almost ready to hatch by now. But I first had to get home, so spent my journey massacring a bunch of firefoxes for their organs so I could craft more things. And the final day of week 2 did start with finding another large dark egg that I'd also need to hatch, but running along the beach there were a few of these weird flappy rays I caught, called Accelerate. There were also some of these small watery elephants. They really were pretty cute. So I captured some and it's called a Tephant. I named mine Dumbo, but it was time to head home. So almost there when I heard the telling noise of a shiny. It's a shiny Cremus, the Eevee looking pal. So after many arrows and a singular pal sphere, I was able to capture it. As I got home, I saw my egg was fully incubated and hatched it into an Arsox. I set my next egg to hatch immediately, which is going to take way longer than the Arsox. But an Arsox is a fiery ram type Pokemon who I named Crimson. I made Crimson a saddle so I'd be able to ride her and set off on a pal punishing program for experience. Only to see those hippie dinosaurs again, known as a Dinosim. These leafy reptiles are really powerful, so of course I wanted it. Whittling its health down to throw my spear in order to capture it. I chose to name it a hippie gnat. Setting off the next day, I went on an absolute rampage, with Crimson destroying everything I could, until I turned my eyes to the Mamarest and threw my fireball. It did 1 damage. So I began to sprint to get away, running straight into a herd of Icthia who massacred my Crimson, killing it. I had to get away as Mamarest were still chasing me down, throwing out Carl, my alpaca. That distracted it just long enough for me to hop on and escape. But then I saw my first flyer. A large eagle that dropped down on me, launching a tornado as I launched my Mega Sphere, trapping it. I turned my focus to its friend that obliterated my health like it was nothing, so I ran away. Getting home on Carl, as raid made itself known, 2 Toko were coming straight at my base. So I tried killing them early, but they ascended up the cliff to start the siege of my base. All the pals sprung into action, but I didn't realize that they were self-destructive as one started to beat. I blasted the second one before it could detonate as well, but the damage had been done. Oh no! My house! Not the house! My house is burning! It could burn down your house! How is that okay? I guess that's why you don't build your houses out of wood. Glad I'd already built the stone house, I guess. The rest of the day was then spent crafting, mining, and fetching the pals who had fallen off the cliff, getting themselves stuck. And day 16 started by simply watching some of my pals work, as I needed it to get a bit darker so some more nocturnal pals would come out. As I was waiting, I was thrown under attack by a raid of wild pals. I tried capturing some of them, but they broke free only to get instantly wrecked by my pals around the base. With the base fully defended, I took the time to make up a Nightwing saddle. So finally I could take flight for the first time. I tested the Nightwing, who I named Pidgeotto, but the sun had finally set, so the nocturnal pals had all begun to show themselves. One of which was a purple galaxy head floater I was able to capture and learn it was a daydream. Thus I made sure to capture at least a few of them, only to spot another few new pals. A night fox I captured called a Nox, as some smug looking owls knocked out Pidgeotto, so I captured them too. And as the day was actually coming to an end, I made a saddle for Hippie Nat, my Dinosim. Since eggs were taking so long to hatch, and I had a couple by now, I set up a second incubator to double my hatching speed, only to realize how chaotic this base actually was. Thus, I built a nice stone foundation area where I then moved all of the pals' beds to at least be a little more orderly, before wanting to go level my Hippie Nat by killing Daydreams, Lamballs, and Katiba. When I found that the Syndicate had returned to set up a new camp, which I promptly massacred so that I could free the pal inside. A Dazzy. Continuing further, there was this four-legged plant with a large bulb on its back known as a capriti. My quest to capture every pal, I made sure to snag this one too. That may have been a mistake since there were these people standing nearby that I ran up to say hello, as they were devout pals protection people, but they just opened fire on me as if I have ever mistreated any pals. Hippie Nut did take them out without even breaking a sweat, so I headed home where my Bulba goat could start its life of labor in my base, while I made a cooking pot to make myself some more luxurious meals. I then proceeded to make myself a mill so I could grind up flour to make cakes, something I'll explain why later, and hatched an Ike the idea from an egg for the day to come to an end. And you end up using a ton of spheres in this game, so I made up even more in the morning, and with plans to capture even tougher pals, I also set up some more storage boxes before learning the engram for the Gigasphere. And the metal armor. Some much anticipated upgrades. What I also needed to upgrade was my base defense, building up a couple sandbag bunkers around for scouts to keep watch. Feeling more secure, I took off again, this time finding a small settlement that had a wandering merchant and a pal merchant in case I ever wanted to buy some. But until the day comes where I'm rich enough to buy more Pokemon, I'll be doing mining myself. A lot of mining. Making sure the pals I do have get back to work. One pal I really want though is the Mamarest. There's only one way to get one, by weakening it to try and catch it. But it just had so much health. I even tried switching to Hippie Nut instead of Pidgeotto, but it was no use as I took a huge blast of damage, so had to retreat home for recovery. And in the morning, once I was well rested, I set up a monitoring stand, and this thing is dangerous. For the pals anyway. You can choose to make them work harder such that their food and sanity could drain way quicker, but they would also work much faster. So if you're ever a true slave driver, this is the structure for you. I also set up a stone quarry so I'd have pals continuously harvest stone, and erected a tree farm to give me plenty of wood. The deer fell in love immediately as it banged its head against the wood. I made a second hot tub since keeping pal sanity high keeps them working, before cooking up some roast Ike the idea. A very tasty meal. Then the rest of the day was just spent crafting up a ton of Gigaspheres in preparation. Massive taming spree, as there were still a ton of bosses I needed to defeat. The next day ended up being quite slow. That is up until I stumbled into one of the cutest bosses around, a watery ferret, who I easily captured with my Gigasphere and then immediately captured the Depresso behind it. But the boss was a Chillet. Kind of like a ferret version of Toothless from How to Train a Dragon, so that's what I named it. I then spent the remainder of the day finding an egg, a cool ruined castle, insta-catching a shiny sheep, another large damp egg this time, and hatching the 2 dark eggs I had incubating into Nox. Day 22 started just outside the church where I sacrificed some more Liftmonk effigies to increase my capture power, as I wanted another boss, a big Honker Llama. They absolutely wrecked me, so I had to flee home where I collected the massive goodies being generated for me by the ranch. I told you it was powerful. With the supplies I made up some more fire arrows as well as a saddle for my ferret Toothless and took off massacring the population for experience only for a bunch of stupid deers to demolish my ferret Toothless, causing me to switch to Crimson in order to finish them off. So I began to make my way home, but I did see and catch a shiny T-Fant. And flying out in the morning, I came across this manhole cover labeled Sealed Realm of Frozen Wings. So I had to investigate, only to be swarmed by a horde of Pengullets and Penkings. This was the boss's dungeon, and they messed me up defeating multiple of my pals. Fortunately, I got home, as at my base my metal armor was complete, so I'd be a little more protected, but I needed my pals to be stronger. To do this, I built a pal essence condenser, which can be used to take all your extra pals and shove them into the veins of one singular pal, boosting their star rating and stats, making them stronger. The rest of the day was then just spent doing some minor exploring and capturing some more pals for my collection. Day 24, 25, and 26 ended up blending themselves together as I first set up a wheat farm in order to level up my pal box, so I could have another workup. Then I went to set up a breeding farm as you can actually get a ton of weird and wonderful pals, and their variants simply by breeding. A mechanic I do plan to look into more later, but I had no space to set up the farm. So I instead just built a wheat silo to accelerate my pal's farming speed, a weapon workbench as I still wanted to make myself an actual gun instead of just these bows, then adventured off where I found an awesome large flat spot that I decided had to be my new base spot. Grabbing what I needed at my base to set up a power box, I placed down some foundations, the power box, a mass of storage boxes, and got a bunch of wax to help build it all for me. Gathering the wood I would need for their beds, and collecting all the resources and old structures from my old base, even shuffle carrying the wood due to being over encumbered, only for a raid to happen as I wanted fast travel. Fortunately my bow made quick work as Crimson finished them off, even snagging one of the raiders in a power sphere as punishment. And setting up the farms and the benches, grabbing the silo I had built so few days ago, and truly organizing the new base to just be improved in every way, including the breeding farm that had been a large reason to choose to move now. Building up the silo again, setting up new hot tubs, making sure to show some appreciation for the pals working hard. One of them anyway. I'm sure the others felt it too. Before building up my own house out of stone just in case any more Toko show up. Or deciding it was time the pals got an upgrade of their own. Crafted up a bunch of cloth to set up some comfier beds which will increase their sanity quicker. And it couldn't have been sooner as a raid of wild dinos attacked. So I captured every single one. Always good when pals deliver themselves to you. I was then checking out the map to see what I had explored and what was still left before deciding to head across a bridge near my base where I immediately found some pals I hadn't seen before. Like this moth which ended up poisoning me, dealing a ton of damage, so I headed home for safety. Once there I made myself a mega shield as well as some more comfy beds. Then well rested I flew off to the Pen King's lair as I had a score to settle. Entering as night fell so they had all gone to sleep, allowing me the element of surprise. As I started to attack and take out the minions one by one, then turned to start work on the Pen King as I lay waste to the oversized blue and white bird. Finally launching my Palsphere, capturing it as my own so I could focus on destroying the second one. I started the journey home, capturing a plant lady known as a bristler, and I found a camp which was run by the people for the protection of pals devout in the morning of day 30. They had a caged pal. Not very protective of them. So after I took them all out and freed the pal, a rabunny, I ran up to the ledge to see what they're actually guarding, and it was a massive ruined structure. I dropped down for a closer look to see this was an ancient burial site with a ton of weird and wonderful pals surrounding it. But it was under siege by these pals devout people who I had to clear out, and they were everywhere. But I worked my way around, even capturing a floating bunny called a Floppy, who I named Waffles. And there was a shiny Floppy that I snagged as well, then turned my attention to this eagle that was called a Gale Claw. But seeing new humans around and not just the syndicate made me head home, where I set up some extra defenses like a mounted crossbow at the sandbags. I stopped by the settlement I had found so many days ago where I bought a loop moon, a pal I hadn't naturally come across, and realized I actually really needed experience, so I went on a massive capturing spree. Whack after whack, throw after throw, and catch after catch. Gaining thousands of experience till I got to level 29 so I could unlock a few very important engrams. The Sphere Line Factory, a Production Line Factory, a handgun, and the Hypersphere. So I continued my mass catching spree as I still gotta catch 'em all when I found a locked up Jolthog Christ in one of the camps. Now with the hundreds of pals in the game, on top of that you can find some that are variants. Pals that with completely different elements compared to their original, and this was a Christ Jolthog. It was like the little electric hedgehog but ice. I am not quite sure how many variants exist out there, but I know there is a lot. So for now I continued capturing what I could, including some brand new pals. And it was then day 34 when I began my journey even deeper into the island, snagging a new wolf as I came up the ridge to see another syndicate stronghold. This one had some of the toughest members I had seen yet, as they had grenades, but I had a Nightwing. With the stronghold cleared, I found an electric egg in a spot that looked like it'd make a really neat mining outpost. Once I captured the Kelpsie, who I named Squidward, I set up a new pile box with a bunch of boars and sheeps. So the boars will automatically mine any stone nearby, and the sheep will pick it up, carrying it to the base. But just doing this would not be enough. So I set up some farms and walls and slowly building up a fully self-sustaining mining outpost. I can just stop by here every day so often to collect a mass amount of passively collected resources. I found this plant-based Bronto right near my base that I captured after Nightwing injured it enough. There are also these fiery birds called a vanworm that I hurt in order to capture them. I also caught a cow, cause why not, before descending into the lair of the Swordmaster. 2 Bushi ninjas were in here and Penking began to blast them with his ice breath, but it wasn't enough as I ran out of pulse spheres, making the decision to leave since I couldn't capture them anyways. Spotting a stronghold, getting smashed by some Mamorist, allowing me to free a Bristler. But too long had passed without a boss tame, so King Pucker, it's time for you to become mine. As we flew into battle, Nightwing was doing good damage but started to get low, so I sent out Hippie Nat, only for one King Pucker to ascend out of nowhere. So with one singled out, we eventually took it down and then saw the other behind us, and Crimson brought it low, allowing me to capture it. Then as I was working at my base, I got notice of another raid. Not this time, as I sprang into action to take out the budget nuker dodos before they got anywhere close to my base. I wanted to change out my flyer on day 37 as Nightwing is good but he's slow. So I made up a saddle for my vanworm and took off soaring high into the sky, starting my massacre on the local population in order to earn as much experience as possible. I found myself a shiny Jolthog in the morning as I headed towards yet another brand new area. Crossing this grand bridge towered by some massive statues. There were these Cinemoths which absolutely wrecked Vanos, my vanworm, so I simply headed home as I wanted to start trying to breed some pals. But for that, I needed cake. I set up a cooking pot and got my T-Fan to run my flour mill. Then while that was going on, I headed out to my mining outpost, where I tried to get my boar to mine the ore, but it didn't have a high enough mining skill, so it just didn't want to work. But fine, guess I'll do it myself. For now anyways. After some time had passed and all my flour was made up, I started cooking up a cake in a frying pan. Not sure how you cook cake in a frying pan, but I did. And it was taking long though, so I set my pals to do it for me and headed out as I planned to bring down the Azurobi, a water dragon serpent boss that I managed to harm enough in order to capture it. Good thing too, as there was a syndicate camp nearby that must have been preparing to take it on, as they brought flamethrowers. Probably didn't realize water would beat fire anyways, but you know. And my Nightwing wind attack beats them too, allowing me to free the thwack captured in the middle. Wandering the fields nearby were these pink sheep that actually had cotton candy as their wool. So while they did knock out my Nightwing, I captured another. With both my flyers dead, I jumped on Hippie Nat to continue my adventure. However, night started to fall. With that came out some fresh new pals, one of which was basically Chromida, a bird plague doctor called a Corknito. So I named the one I caught Crownito. There was also a loop moon guarding the syndicate camp. I'm guessing they defeated all the guards. Then nearby, I found my first large egg, so these can potentially hatch even more powerful pals. I was just spending my time exploring as I needed to find the next boss tower to try and fight it, and I instead found a large draconic pal with a long serpentine body called a Jormuntide. I continued to move through the biomes, entering a bamboo grove, and here there was a sweeper, a larger version of the Swee, kind of like a cat and a mop had a baby. It was at least cute though, unlike these syndicate thugs that were now using flamethrowers to try and defeat me. But Ferret Toothless handled them with no worries, as he exploded a canister on a thug's back, blasting him into the sky. But I dealt with each one, letting me save the small candle pal trapped in the camp, a flambell who I named Wick. When I kept moving forwards, not quite realizing how low health my chillet was, as a random syndicate fired one shot, killing him. So I hopped onto Crimson, now down 3 of my 5 pal team and no fast travel point in sight, with no clue where I was, as this was my first steps into the desert. Spotting many new pals including a Dumud, I was trying to catch it as a flock of Toko advanced towards me, but I caught the Dumud and named it Flopper. When I spotted a pal that really excited me, a large tortoise with some drills on its back known as a Digtoise. And it was so angry to see me as it spun straight at me, dealing massive damage, causing a retreat. I was so close to a fast travel point when I saw a small herd of Relaxaurus. These blue dinosaur boys, but one of them got mad and I was too scared right now to even attempt the capture. Traveling away as it got right next to me, could not have cut it closer. Safely at home, I set up a ton of the eggs I had found to begin hatching, and these large eggs take way longer to hatch. So while I waited, I helped my Incineram continue to bake a cake before cooking up some eggs to feed my starving team. Also made a rocket launcher for my pen gullet, something that I immediately forgot to try out, but don't worry, I will definitely be using it this video. I wanted to work out where the next boss was, so I flew up high on Vanos when I spotted a huge tree reminding me of that tablet I saw at the start of the game. Spotting what towers I could in the distance, and I definitely needed to see if I could get to any soon to scout them out. I ended up coming across some Syndicate scrubs fighting some of the blue Rexes who I managed to catch for myself, as well as found another fruit tree for some more skills before flying over to the Mop Cat boss, the Sweeper, in order to take it out. In the morning, I did end up on the edge of what seemed to be the volcanic biome, with new pals like a fire lizard, a fire pony, but I started to overheat. So had to leave only to find a fire maiden and a fire kelpie. Lots of fire pals in the area here. I suppose it makes sense. There were even some of the fire maidens cooling off at the beach, while the fire lizards had a swim. Across the bay area, there were more of Crimson's kin, the Arsox, but with no way to go deep into the volcano area yet, I headed home where I set up even more egg incubators, as I had amassed quite the collection. Working hard to craft up nails when a raid of pals devout showed up, and I proved just how devout my pals are by burning them all to a crisp. And I had to expand my work area in the morning in order to build my very first conveyor belt. This one was used to make pal spheres. I was just short of ingots for the generator, so I had to mine some more ore to let it start to smelt, and I had to look at my map only to see just how big the lands actually are. I still have a ton of exploring to do, but maybe you can explore the subscribe button if you found yourself enjoying the video. Consider joining the Discord, it really would help me out. I have a Palworld server that is free to join. Come on down, it'll be tons of fun. I stopped by my base and saw I had actually gotten another Nightwing with the Swift passive skill. Now there's a massive variety of passive skills, but Swift gives you a 30% boost to movement speed. So this Nightwing was much faster than my previous one and great for traveling. I then got my first egg from breeding in the morning of day 46. Now breeding is a huge mechanic in Palworld, something I didn't fully understand and likely never will. I had just bred my 2 Arsox together, so that gave me another Arsox, but you can breed any random combination of pals to get a completely different one. I'm sure there'll be more information coming out on this soon, so I spent some time hatching all my eggs, even getting a beacon, a large lightning bird, as well as a Bushi the fire samurai. For building myself the generator I needed that could then power my sphere production line thanks to that beacon I just hatched, providing power to the generator. Welcome to the Industrial Age. An age that must have pissed off the raiders as they yet again attacked, but thanks to my awesome base fort, they couldn't even get up here. I set up my pal condenser again so I could hopefully power up my pals, then fast traveled back out to continue my explorations where some raiders were waiting in ambush, but Vanos just made them all vanish. Especially the flamethrower guys by igniting their backpacks and just exploding them. But I was off to the desert where I captured myself a Dumud while some Toko tried to explode me again, but not today as I could just dodge into the sky. But it started to get hot again, so I headed home to see what could be done about it, and saw that there is a heat resistant armor in the game. I'll need to make that at some point. For now, I found myself my very first cave dungeon, the Hillside Cavern. Now, dungeons in the game are awesome. They seem to be randomly dotted across the map. However, they will appear and disappear based on a timer. So they're not always found where they should be, but are always in the same spots. This dungeon was full of some more syndicate thugs who my Azurobi just popped to death with water bubbles, and Ferret Toothless sliced with an ice slash. Making it to the end, there was an Alpha Hucrates, defeating one of them and taming the other. They guarded the two chests, giving me a pendant and a technology book. After leaving the cave, I hung around the entrance to see it vanish before my eyes, showing me that these weird outcrops are where the dungeons will randomly spawn on the map. At home, I hatched one of the large scorching eggs, giving me a Pyron Noct, the Pyron Dark variant. Then proceeded to spend the rest of the day hardening up by crafting cement I would need for more structures, and defending the base from a mass of Pyro Syndicate thugs. With the cement, I made up a better hot spring for the pals to regen their stamina faster, and headed off to the small settlement where I traded a ton of rare resources I had found for a large amount of gold. With the gold, I bought myself a Univault from the Pal merchant in my quest to catch them all. And at home, I made myself a faster furnace, as ingots were becoming a seriously difficult to acquire resource. That's when I hatched a Dumud. Reminding me of the dig toys in the desert, I also leveled up my base to level 15, unlocking me the ability to do a third base, so now I could have 2 potential outposts. I ventured out again where I did find some Alpha Univaults that I started to fight, dealing some really good damage, allowing my Hypersphere to capture the Lightning Horse. I named mine Leshrac, after a hero in Dota. Nearby, I also managed to collect my first huge egg, a huge dragon egg. Now this excited me, but I was here for something else as I entered the realm of the Swordmaster. Opening fire on the Bushi duo, I sent out a Azurobi to handle one while I weaved around the other, dodging and firing arrows, hiding behind a pillar, but I was taking too much damage, so cowardly dipped out of the arena and headed home. I didn't want to die, okay? I instead headed to the desert where, riding on Ferret Toothless, I was able to fight off some dig toys, managing to capture them even while they tried to spin me to death, quickly snagging another pair nearby, and nearly running straight into Anubis, the guardians of the desert. And I was clearing out a syndicate camp in the morning when a Toko flock almost blew me up, but one explosion pushed me away, allowing me to safely harvest some sulfur, and with my dig toys and sulfur successfully claimed, I made my way across the ocean to a brand new land, and this place seemed magical, up until the researchers opened fire on me trying to kill me. So I had to dodge and weave around them as there was this massive ruins which basically looked like an abandoned city. I began to explore around, finding many pals and eggs around the area, and even a brand new pal like these ice deer, but they were brutal. Some flaming griffins roaming around the night, but it was clear I was underleveled for this area, and flew across the bay towards the snowy mountains. These frost-bound mountains had some interesting wasp and bee pals. What was most interesting was the second pal tower, Lily and Lylene. The fight started with me throwing out Vanos, whose Dark Orb attack was highly effective against the giant plant. Dodging high into the sky, I had to fly as fast as possible, but Lylene was too strong for now as she knocked me off Vanos, causing me to fall to the floor, knocked unconscious. Having lost the fight, I headed to my mining outpost where I set up my dig toys to begin grinding down the ore nodes, now fully generating me a passive supply of ore, and headed home where I hatched up a ton of eggs, gaining quite a few brand new pals like the Ice Reptaro, a Kitsune which can keep you warm or cool if you ride it, a Sibilex, a Rangrex, and even an Ice King Paka. I knew there had to be a fire boss, so I was going to need a team of water pals to take it out. In fact, I was going to need a team of every type of pal if I planned to take out these bosses. The rest of the day was then spent hatching a truckload of eggs as I had stockpiled these a bit, getting a Relaxaurus, a Kitsune, and more. In fact, I replaced my whole team with an Ice Reptaro, Kitsune the mount which can keep me warm or cool, Sibilex, Rangrex, and Ice King Paka. And the syndicate was starting to get really aggressive as I found them lurking around my mining outpost. Fortunately, they did try to bring some guns to a tornado fight as Nightwing blew straight through them. So with my base in order, I fast traveled back to the north, only to get hit by an ambush of Arsocks who almost killed Nightwing. So I got away to start my ascent up and over the mountain to find a massive snowy tundra, preventing me going further due to the cold. With no saddle for Kitsune yet, I just continued around it, exploring a massive desert, where I did see a level 50 shiny Toko with 0% chance of catching it. But the heat started to get me low on health too, and I had to leave, making sure to grab the fast travel point to come back here later. And what I didn't realize was there was a snow biome blocking my path home, which almost killed me as I froze on the back of Nightwing. So I had to be careful as I spotted some pals I didn't have yet, like these black and white rats known as a gory rat. In the morning, I discovered I was entering a volcanic area which had these fire-fueled lady squirrels I was able to capture. Wixen acquired. With my Wixen, I kept moving to end up in another desert, and with it so early in the morning, the desert wasn't quite hot yet as I began to explore through, spotting a robin quill terror, a massive scorpion named Menacing, these fiery birds called Suzaku, a dungeon which was too strong for me with my current team, and a level 46 shiny Dazzy which I wanted. So I drew back my bow and fired. The Dazzy began to drop lightning bolts behind me, only to get hit, so I had to dart away, having not realized how low my health was from the heat as I got knocked out of the sky. I now had a problem though. I somehow had to get my stuff back. So I made myself a tropical outfit to help with the heat, as well as a saddle for my Kitsune, the wolf which protects you from heat and cold. Then ran into the desert, where I did see one of the nocturnal pals, the Lavender, a tall pink humanoid looking pal, but I spotted something much larger. I could see a small grouping of buildings in the distance, so I sped over to it, and it's called the Dune Shelter. This small shanty town was pretty impressive with some merchants and vendors dotted around, one of which sold 2 very expensive Nightwings, but I still needed my stuff. Once the sun started to rise, warming the air a bit, I flew out the town on my Nightwing, traveling past a massive flock of Toko and some more of those firebirds and the robin quill. Before reaching a huge cliff face, I had to ascend up and over to get back to my stuff. Now I could continue my journey when I saw some of these lightning dogs called a Greyhound. I chose to try damage one, but with how high a level they were, and these Suzaku showing interest in me, I had to leave. Even decided to leave the desert entirely back to the volcanic crack, where I did put some of those pals to sleep as they were guarding a large verdant egg. I'd been collecting a ton of eggs in anticipation of a massive hatching spree. There was another Yormantide, a pal that I really wanted, but couldn't get right now, and I ended up finding more pals that stood no chance with their guns versus my eagle, but night was coming in fast. Night, however, causes everything to go to sleep, allowing me to fly straight up to a syndicate group sleeping next to some Cheshire cats. I of course wanted the cats, so did have to fight to bring them down to low health and smash its face with my pal sphere in order to capture it. And continuing on, I did find these small little fire deer called a Ruby, but I wanted to keep exploring this entire section to see what I could find. Flying far across the ocean, eventually spotting a cliff face in the fog in the distance. Finally getting closer to see it was quite a large landmass, and it had some Azurabes and a strange coloured Ichthyodeer, Terror variant, which I easily captured. I then kept moving in to see this was classified as #1 wildlife sanctuary. I was technically poaching. That didn't stop me from stealing from their chests to get a metal armor schematic. And there was also this flower lady I was able to capture called Petalia. It looked very similar to Lylene, the trainer's Pokemon we had tried to fight in the tower, so of course I had to capture her. But there were no other pals on the island, so I wanted to move on to where the Broncherry Alpha was waiting for me. And while I already did have a Broncherry, I still had to defeat the Alpha as part of my challenge, so I figured I may as well capture them. My explorations continued straight into another volcanic area where I did use Kitsune to keep me cool, before grabbing the fast travel point so I could head home as all my eggs were ready to hatch, giving me a mass of new pals including the Dinosaur Lux, the Mosander, and Foxicle. But with all the eggs hatched, I repaired my armor and headed back to the volcano, and boy am I glad I did, after I came straight up to a beautiful blue fire manticore. I wanted one so badly, but it kept escaping my spheres, till finally with a 36% chance it caught in my hypersphere. The second one was caught soon after, allowing me to continue on my adventure, as I really wanted to get to the top of this volcano, but the heat was getting to me as I had to retreat using Kitsune to cool me down. Retreating all the way back to where there was a fisherman's village I had just completely missed. There was even a merchant where I bought myself some heat resistance underwear and a ring of flame resistance. These should help me survive the scorching elements as I make my way up the volcano, for what is essentially the third time. Scaring some incinerams as I ran past, and spotting some fanglopes, ascending higher and higher on Kitsune before switching to Nightwing when I saw a point of interest. There was a huge statue of Anubis here, carved out of sheer rock, clearly being worshipped as some kind of god or deity, and it had some skill fruit offerings for me at its feet as a way to end off the day. The climb up the volcano was harsh due to the low stamina of my Nightwing, but I finally made it to find this was the Tower of the Eternal Pyre, a boss that quite clearly would be making use of fire to defeat any who would challenge it. I didn't feel ready to attempt it yet as I wanted a more powerful flyer, and I wanted a Quiverin. These massive cute dragonflies were captured with no problem. One even came with Swift, so it's nice and speedy too. I then headed home to hatch out my eggs, getting a Yormantide Ignis twice. This massive serpent could be exactly what I need to take down Lily and Lylene thanks to its fire supremacy. I also looked what I needed for a tier 3 pistol schematic I had found, and I was going to need a lot of ingots, so spent some time farming for that and even set up a second forge to help with the smelting. And I was almost ready for my revenge against Lily and Lylene. It was day 61 as I realized I really needed some upgrades. Looking in the engrams, I did see a pump-action shotgun, some refined metal armor, but in order to make refined metal, I needed coal. And charcoal wasn't quite going to cut it. I checked by the volcano, but saw no nodes, so thought if I'm going to be searching, I needed a saddle for my new flyer. The Quiverin saddle. The saddle made up, I also made a makeshift light by throwing all my foxpox into a cage, then headed off on my Quiverin, only to attack some pirates who melted my Quiverin, knocking me out of the sky. Kitsune was immediately thrown out to jump onto and escape the volcano. I had a look to see if I could make the refined pickaxe, but still with no coal I was out of luck. So I went on a massive ore harvesting spree, smashing so many nodes my pick broke. But I couldn't wait for the refined metal to make myself an upgrade, setting up the conveyor belt to begin crafting the very expensive handgun schematic I had found. I also made a saddle for the Dark Manticore before laying down to sleep for the night. Then with the sun rising and feeling confident, I went off to the snow where I entered a tower for the second time. Hello, Lily and Lylene. The fight started with me throwing out Kitsune, who started with some fire tornadoes. Lily tried to throw out a poison attack, which I dodged by recalling Kitsune and sent out Blaze Howl. He was taking heavy damage, so I called it back to send my Ignis Yormantide. Damage was getting thrown around heavily from both sides as I swapped back to Kitsune, with my arrows peppering Lily as she turned to fight me instead, as I had to sprint and dive away. Over 2 minutes had passed and almost 20,000 damage done. I brought Blaze Howl back to deal some more damage, as I replaced him with Yormantide, who got one shot as he was released. It was up to Kitsune again, whose fire tornadoes kept massacring the Flower Princess. She was down to half health, and with over 6 minutes left, things were looking good. Sibilex had started dealing damage, but I needed the fire damage, and Blaze Howl was perfect for it, but Lylene was too strong as she killed off my Blaze Howl. I was now down to 2 pals, so I sent out Quiverin to see what it could do, swapping into Kitsune to try to keep DPS high, but the second time Quiverin went out, some bubbles to the face knocked it out completely. Only 2 pals left. Kitsune was my final fire type, and it's up to you. But health was low, so I kept dodging Lily's attack by retrieving him, throwing him out to attack. So I jumped on Kitsune to try myself, only for one badly timed tornado to get me hit by water glob, killing Kitsune. I was out of fire tames, So I sent in Siblix, and Lily was focused on me as I dodged. Siblix in and out, attack after attack, bringing Lily's health down to below 10k as less than 2 minutes were left. We kept fighting and fighting, 2k left, but I just ran out of arrows. All I had left was Siblix, but all it took was one bad attack as Sib was killed. 24 health, 1 minute left, and a dream. Oh my god, that was so close. I can't believe how close that was. Uh-oh, the cold. With Lily and Lylene defeated, I fast traveled home to put all 5 of my pals into stasis so they could heal. We are then hung out for the rest of the day to recover my sanity from that nail-biting fight. 2 bosses down, 3 to go. The next few days ended up being a truckload of ore mining, pal fighting, boss catching, pal taming, camp clearing, pal freeing, fast travel unlocking, and boss fleeing. It was just an overall incredibly busy time. That is until I was able to get home and collect my handgun, and it was a huge upgrade. So I went out to the fisherman's point in order to buy a ton of ammo. But in all that time, something I never found was coal. Fortunately, I got a tip that there was coal on the wildlife sanctuary. So I made a saddle for a Zerobi, then made the swim across only to see that they had increased security here as I was now listed as a criminal. But I wasn't here for poaching, as I collected a ton of coal to then smelt into refined ingots. And while waiting on resources to be ready, I was attacked by a random group of soldiers. But they stood no chance as I melted the ground beneath them. With the threat cleared, I made myself a refined metal pick before spending a ton of time gathering even more ore. Enough ore so I could make another production line at the end of day 69. Nice. With this fresh new production line, I was able to craft myself a ton of much needed upgrades. Like a large feed bag which can keep all my pals well fed, a giga shield for some extra defense, a hip lantern to light my way at night, and a refined metal helm for even more armor. With my fresh gear, I entered into another dungeon. There was an ambush waiting for me that Quiven was able to clear through when I saw a pal I didn't have yet. Some cat lady who I shot in the head in order to capture it, and fighting the way through the dungeon to end at a Mosander duo boss. Kitsune was able to burn them down, killing off one so that I could capture the other, collecting the chests as my reward in order to end off the day. And there was another raid in the morning of day 71, but my entire base jumped into action, utterly destroying it. So I set up some ultra balls to start crafting, as I was going to need them to capture some of the stronger pals. I also made myself a mega grappling gun, as I had a plan to get myself a metric buttload of ore. It was quite fun to pull myself around, but I would be using it later as I headed out where I had found not 1 shiny Sui, not 2, but 3 of them in the span of 5 minutes. Not sure what lucky god was looking down on me, but I just used up all of it in one go on some rare Suis. I kept moving to capture myself a couple Doomud as I was working on building myself an army of ground pals in order to fight a lightning boss. I also captured myself a Lavender, the weirdest of all the pals, before heading over to Anubis only to almost get one shot as I had to flee as fast as I could. Fleeing all the way to a cave that I had cleared all the problems using my pistol, including the Alpha Vixies guarding the exit. On my quest for some stronger earth taints, I also took my chance to try and grab myself a Mammorest, but I accidentally killed it as it killed its friend, leaving me with 2 dead Mammorest and none in my pockets. So with no Mammorests, I did at least find the Alpha Doomud that I caught. Then I found a Mammorest that I was able to catch, as well as a rare Capriti. Not exactly super useful, but hey, that was a rare. So with that, I also grabbed the Nightwing Alpha who spawned nearby, then turned to take on the Beacon next, firing round after round while Kitsune fought alongside me, capturing one and killing the other. And I still was not feeling any closer to beating the next boss on day 74. So my journey continued west, finding a massive ruined castle, when I spotted the same rock formation as the sanctuary. Crossing the ocean, and on the island was a large grassy looking pal known as a Wampo Botan, or Yormantide Ignis, and a Menacing. Three very powerful pals who would definitely want to try and get, but my spheres kept failing against the Wompo and I had to abandon my goal. So I had a plan and set up a pal box on the beach nearby so I could fast travel home to make up even more ultra spheres. Getting back to find there were now Quiverins on the island, and they looked so cute. But I wasn't here for them, I wanted the Wompo. Finally catching it after way too many spheres were wasted. Then as I kept exploring the island, I accidentally ran straight into a group of PIDF guards who opened fire for trespassing, forcing me to yet again flee the island from my poaching mission. But I didn't need to poach as there was a fire eagle waiting for me on the cliffs by the beach. A Ragnarhawk that was level 34 and it absolutely wrecked me. This game, it really just is so challenging and so much fun that even when you're close to max level, you have to be careful while trying to capture new pals. But I continued on my flight, finding an egg at the very tippy top of a tower. I took some time to check out the lava fields behind the castle, but I was definitely not ready for whatever may be in there. So I headed home to restock my supplies so I could head out to mine coal. Lots of coal. So much coal that I almost didn't spot the Grisbolt, Alphadran, and Veilette which I was able to catch. With my new pals and all of the coal I smelted up, all of the refined ingots. Well, Yormantide did it, but I told him to do it. So I've technically made all the refined ingots. But I needed more as now with all the coal, I needed some more ore. So that I could make myself a set of heat-resistant refined metal armor and a Reptara saddle. This was it. The final preparations to fight the next boss, but I got a little distracted first, as I found a high-level dungeon in the tundra. One I entered to find infested with PAL researchers. But Yormantide Fire Tornadoes was able to melt them alive, so I kept moving through the caverns, full of Cyberlex taking them out, but the casualties were not nothing as they killed Kitsune, my trusty Ice Fire Wolf. Thankfully, Yormantide was able to finish them off so I could move deeper, having to grapple up cliffs to make it to the next rooms. I was out of bullets by now, but I wasn't turning back, Quiverinn helping bring down a flock of Tombats when my path was blocked by more researchers. Now, I'm not ashamed to say that I cheesed the heck out of these guys, hiding behind a wall as I sent Yormantide in and out with Reptara for them to easily bring them down. I was definitely underleveled for this dungeon. With all these kills, experience was rolling in like crazy. Cheese really is the most powerful element, until I arrived at the final boss cavern, Maraith, the messenger of death. I was going to have to take this slow, as I began to carefully and methodically send out Yormantide, slowly but surely sending in Pal, calling them back, sending them back in, burning Maraith down when I saw an opportunity to sprint into the room, but quickly realized this was a mistake as I retreated back to the choke point. One Maraith died till eventually the second was able to be killed off with one final stomp from Reptaro. Feeling incredibly drained after that massive fight through the caves, I headed home where I hatched all the eggs I'd collected, even getting a Suzaku Aqua, a very powerful water fly that I couldn't quite make a saddle for, but knew I wanted to. However, after that cave I knew I needed more upgrades as I made some cold resistant armor which should help with any ice fights. There were still more alphas to bring down, and one of which was the gluttonous Thunder Dragon, Relaxaurus Lux. Its lightning attacks were powerful, but Reptaro gave it no chance to survive and no chance for me to catch it. Ending day 80 with the long way still to go. So to try and get stronger, I started crafting myself a pump action shotgun, working directly alongside my pals, tirelessly crafting the shotgun and heading over to the fishing village to buy a few hundred rounds of ammo, and then fast traveled up to the brothers of the Eternal Pyre Tower. Let's do this. Bring it on, Axel and Orsurk. I started by throwing in Reptara as I opened fire with my shotgun. 10 minutes, 130,000 health, this was going to be tough. I sent out Dumud to start dropping some mud spikes before swapping him out for Siblex who could freeze the lightning dragon. I had to keep diving and firing as fast as I could. 2 minutes into the fight and over 30k damage done, I was getting the hang of things, pulling my pals back to dodge Orsurk's attack and shotgun blast firing as fast as possible. I was making good progress. I had to keep swapping my pals in and out to maximize damage and keep them healthy as their cooldowns and health would regen while in my backpack. But I myself kept firing with my shotgun as the timer hit 5 minutes left. Orsurk was below half health with just over 60k. This fight was going to be close. I had to increase my damage, but things were about to go dramatically wrong as one final shot of my shotgun broke it. I switched to my pistol as Siblix kept dishing out massive damage. By far my strongest pal versus Orsurk, but she was taking too much damage as I swapped her out only to get blasted by a lightning Kamehameha. Reptaro was doing his best to melt them down, but Orsurk was focused on me as I got blasted again, stunning me for what felt like forever. So I brought out Sibilex again to keep my damage high as I dived out of the way of their stunning attack once more. Threw her back out, not noticing the low health as Orsurk smited her with a powerful lightning attack, killing her off. So I switched to Reptile to try and continue my onslaught, dodging out of the way of their flame attack. Only 2 minutes left and only 20% of their health left. I had fallen behind in damage, but I wasn't giving up. Firing my pistol as fast as I possibly could while Reptile turned the room to magma. I sent out Doomwood again as his mud attacks were highly effective to them, but he was slow. 1 minute left and 11% health. It was coming down to the wire. Shot after shot. Room filling with magma and rocks flying at Orsurk. 10 seconds. I don't think I can do it. I think I ran out of time.
Keep going. Just don't worry about it. Just keep going as hard as you can.
I was so close. No! 6 shots with my pistol stood between me and victory. But I had failed to defeat Orsurk and was now seriously far behind my goal for this 100 days. Back at home, I threw my pals into the pal box so they could start to recover, as well as repaired all of my gear. I wanted to get stronger so I could come back to take out Orsurk, but I had a lot of work to do. So I grabbed all the skill fruits I'd accumulated over time, as well as finally made use of the pal condensation machine, imbuing my Doomwood with the souls of his brethren, increasing his stats and skills. However, knowing the team was feeling pretty down after that near loss, I made up a decal gun, which is essentially used for weaponized graffiti, only to be short of pal fluid I needed to make the ammo. So I flew off on my quiver and to begin a water pal massacre, defeating dozens of T-Fants, Pengullets, and Celeres. Nothing stood a chance versus my pistol. And with enough blood of my enemies collected, I got home where I made up the ammo, and let me introduce to you the Relaxsaurus sticker gun. It was so much fun splattering stickers all over the place, even smothering some of my pals in them. It was great, but I had enough playing around as it was time to start improving my army for Orsurk. Making an Ice Reptaro saddle as ice and ground are the most effective attacks versus an electric dragon. I just needed to level them up. Best way to do that is firstly by capturing every pal you can. But at this stage in the game, the strongest spheres needed are so expensive, I chose the second best option. And that was relentlessly fight any and everything I could, while capturing the occasional pal I didn't have yet, like the Ragnarhawk. His friend didn't make it. I ended up leveling up myself, so I was able to make a saddle for my Suzaku Aqua, a very powerful flyer, as well as a saddle for my Yormantide. But I was unfortunately still one level away from the legendary sphere, the most powerful pal catching tool. And I had another idea in order to keep increasing my power levels, and that was by making the Statue of Power. Like the shrine which can be found in the church, here I was able to imbue myself with the Liftmonk effigies I had collected to increase my capture power. And then I was able to imbue my pals with all of the souls I had found, increasing Siblix damage to plus 30% and her health to plus 24%. I did a couple other upgrades as well, then set off to do a dungeon so I could level my Suzaku, capturing the 2 Kativa at the end and freeing an Arsox who was imprisoned in a camp outside. But these were all such low levels. So I fast traveled to the north and headed into the snow. And thanks to my cold resistant armor and the thermal underwear, I was able to survive in this harsh climate, where I found and tamed a Hang Eucharist. Then found this weird spiky boy that looked like Pete Claw's ward from Monsters Inc., a Cryolinx, and I wasn't able to catch him as he kept breaking out my spheres. Thus I kept just hiking up the mountain, revealing an absolutely gorgeous sight. a huge, sprawling, abandoned snow city, and another tower. The tower of the Palworld Genetic Research Unit. If I barely lost to Orsurk, no way I could even try this yet. And that's when I saw the tree was just there. I wanted to know what was hidden there, and began to fly over, and on my way did come past one of the 4 legendary pals, the Frostallion. But I had a tree to visit. Flying high over the water when my path was blocked by a red force field. I wasn't sure if it simply wasn't unlocked yet, or maybe I first had to defeat the 5 towers that I knew were in the world. I found there were some Siblix here, so once I got some better spheres, I would definitely come back here in order to catch them. So wanting better spheres, I was going to need some circuit boards to upgrade. It was short of the oil I needed to make it. I was at least able to begin working with my pals to make an assault rifle, which I got the schematic for somewhere, as well as some more ultra spheres. Then headed off to the desert to begin en masse defeating all the pals there for the oil. It was also just good experience to capture some pals I didn't have yet, like the Robin Quiltera. And I did encounter a wandering party of Syndicate soldiers, and they've started carrying around rocket launchers? Like, who decided this was okay? So once I got home, I picked up my assault rifle, which had been completed, and it was an absolutely devastating tool of destruction. So I headed out to sell off my precious objects to buy a couple hundred rounds of ammunition, as tomorrow it was time to take on Axel once more. Waking up, weapons and teams fully ready, I headed back to the top of Mount Obsidian where I was ready to enter the tower of the Eternal Pyre. Axel, you're going down, as I sent out Siblix. So I opened fire with my assault rifle, and whoa boy was it so incredibly powerful. Orsurk's health began to drop at a rapid rate as Sib kept freezing him while I did my best to dodge, dive, and dealing so much more damage. Their health began to drop as rapidly as my assault rifle could fire, bringing him down to 30k health within 7 minutes left as my rifle ran out of ammunition. But I still had my shotgun. As we continued to fire blast after blast at Orsurk, spell after spell until they had 10k health left, 5k left, and boom! Down goes Orsurk. Absolutely wrecked. It felt good. I admired the view below, only to spot some Pyre soldiers waiting to ambush me. So I chose to get the jump on them instead in order to take them out. And with Axel and Orsurk defeated, I ended up gaining enough experience to reach level 44. And saw that everything was so expensive. At least my Ice Reptaro could help a little with mining some coal, before grabbing out what were my strongest water tames, as I had a single destination in mind: the desert. Finding a dungeon which I just had to explore, delving into it, and let's just say a Hydra cannon to the face is pretty powerful. So I fought my way through the cave, taking out some more brothers from the pyre until I get to the final room. Well, a Hydra cannon to the face is effective. So is a pump action shotgun. And with the loot free to claim at the end, I got myself a cold resistant underwear, which will be great for when I go back to the snow. The desert really was a beautiful biome, and I even noticed another sanctuary off in the distance, but I'll be back for that later, as there was only 10 days left, and for day 100 I had quite the idea. I stopped by the fishing village to stock up on more bullets, using up all of my gold, then made my way to enter the PIDF tower. It was time to fight Marcus and Phalaris. It went terribly. I tried to mow it down with my assault rifle, but since Phalaris was a firepower, I simply didn't have powerful enough water powers in order to damage him. Half my time had passed by the time I had barely done 50k damage. His molten floor attacks kept me moving until I ran out of ammo and tried to jump on his zero beam. Without my rifle increasing the damage output, we simply could not keep it up needed to beat him. So I chose to honorably accept my defeat. I blew off some steam in the morning by blowing a penguin up with a rocket launcher. That felt satisfying, and doing this made me realize I needed a lot more firepower. So after doing some crafting with my pals, then started the longest ever craft I could, completing it after half an entire day while it crafted. I jumped onto my Relaxaurus to use my new most fun ability, Rocket Barrage. It wasn't very good, yet, as this Relaxaurus was only level 2, but this would be a mighty powerful addition to my boss fighting team. However, even with the Relaxaurus, I knew I needed a really powerful water mount to lead my team, a mount which I already had the fire variant of. That pal was the Emperor of the Sea, Yormantide. We began to fight as I used my damage shotgun to blast the sea serpent, making really good damage as I kept swapping between my slapped together team of lightning pals, fighting as hard as I could, but Yormantide was so incredibly strong. Even getting them down to low health, it only took one stray shot as I threw my spear, but I was hit, defeating me. But that just increased my drive of why I wanted one. And I set off in the morning for my daily resource grind, only to have some of the Pal Devouts show up and require a very intense shower. But I guess that annoyed the PIDF as they attacked me for trespassing, so I helped them out with a bubble bath. And with a decent chunk of resources, my team still needed work, so I headed into the snowy tundra once more, where I found a frozen mineshaft that had a Lylene knocked inside. Way too strong for me to even attempt. And I found some more cryolinks on day 96 that I was able to weaken down, so that I could capture the Monsters Inc. Eric Claw, only for the herd of Wompo nearby to absolutely decimate my blaze health. They kept up their onslaught as they sniped my Suzaku out of the sky. I was now stuck in the snow without my strongest pal and no flyer. Thankfully I had my Relaxaurus who was able to carry me safely into the warmer climate and blasting the researchers on my way past, before safely leaping off the edge to the safety of the water below, running up to the fast travel point in order to escape the north. And I wanted to upgrade, so I made some saddles for my pal team. Also made sure to check up on my base workers, having some fun with the Killamari I got much earlier on. And it was quite fun to spend some time with some of the lesser used pals. Headed out to the desert in order to do some more exploring, as I still had that sanctuary I needed to visit. And I continued the goal of capturing every pal by snatching myself a Suzaku, the fire original variant of my main flyer. But the explorations continued, finding some alpha Suzaku and a secret mineshaft which had a black marketeer in the bottom of it. While the rest of the desert was just swarmed with syndicate soldiers, but my Relaxaurus was starting to get pretty powerful as rockets were able to rain down hellfire and my Suzaku brought down the full weight of a tsunami. And dozens of syndicate members fell under my feet as I traveled across the dunes towards the sanctuary number 3. There were some PIDF guards here, but I suppose in their eyes I wasn't technically setting foot in the sanctuary, considering I was just flying around on my Suzaku. But then in the morning I saw the pals that caused this island to be considered a sanctuary, such as Lylene, the Pal's devout main pal, capturing it to be my own, along with an Orsurk, when I spotted another new pal, the Blazamut, a large fiery beast that I captured to be my own as my final capture of this 100 days. So that brings me to the end of my time, a time that I've enjoyed so incredibly much, but it's unfinished. I tried my best, but failed. That's okay, because I will be back to complete all of it, and I hope you'll be here to see it by hitting subscribe. Thank you for watching, goodbye.